I want to start today by sharing not a story, but a feeling with all of you. And I must admit that for most of you, this will be slightly difficult since you just had dinner. Because the feeling that I want to share with all of you is the feeling of hunger. You see, hunger, for me, perfectly describes what I feel about leadership. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to close your eyes briefly. And I want you to think about a day that you went without eating almost anything. Maybe it was even longer than a whole day. If you've never had such an experience, just think about a time when you were just very, very hungry. Can you feel it? Your empty stomach, it's rumbling, making some noises. Sometimes it's even painful. You cannot concentrate. And yet somehow, you manage to keep moving forward because you know that in the near future, there is the prospect that you can fulfill that very basic human need to feed. You're hungry. And for the next moments that we will spend in silence, I want you to completely surrender yourself to that feeling right there. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but trust me when I tell you, that feeling right there has everything to do with leadership. You may open your eyes. I was hungry. You see, I spent most of my second and third year as a college student homeless and hungry. My family had recently gone back to my home country, Mexico. And when I stayed here, I knew I had to make a choice. Except really, it was never a choice. Did I pay for tuition and books, or did I pay for rent and food? Sounds like a difficult choice, but it wasn't. You see, I had worked so hard to make it to this university, I knew I had to keep studying. And then that meant sacrificing food and a roof over my head. Now, there is something very cool about being homeless and being hungry at a university. One thing that you can really count on is there will always be an event with free food somewhere in this place. You should have seen my agenda back in those days. It did not say leadership this and leadership that. It said pizza on Wednesdays, bagels on Thursdays. And yet, it was precisely this very basic feeling of hunger that led me to discover leadership. I began to show up to so many events that one day an administrator came up to me and said, "Luis, you are at every single event. You are so involved." And I just said, "No, I'm just hungry." But really, up to this moment, by this point, really, I had gone to so many schools to talk about my personal experience as an undocumented immigrant. My senior year in high school, my counselor told me, undocumented immigrants don't go to college, Luis, so you are not going to college. My second year here at this university, I was advised by a financial aid officer to just simply give up and try college later on. And I said no. And I kept pushing forward time and again. And yet, I did not believe I was a leader. You see, the feeling of hunger has many things to teach us. One of them, I believe, is about finding your purpose. Steve Jobs, on his famous commencement address at Stanford University, one of his final reminders were to stay hungry and stay foolish. I truly understand what he meant. I think when you're hungry at a very basic level, once again, it is an uncomfortable feeling. And I oftentimes had to ask myself, why did I feel so uncomfortable with the notion that I could be a leader? Was it the color of my skin, my accent? So the fact that I was an immigrant, undocumented, somehow those words are not often used to describe a leader. And I definitely did not believe that they described me as a leader. And yet here I was, going through campus, eating pizza and bagels, and at the same time discovering my purpose. Because over time, I stopped going to these events because of the food. I was at these events because I truly wanted to make a difference. And I began to understand that all along this time, everything that I had been doing, from believing in myself, that when someone told me that my education was impossible and making it possible, to the moment that I decided to take extra time outside of this campus to mentor other students, to make sure that what happened to me will never happen to them, I suddenly began to realize that is leadership. That is purpose. It's uncomfortable, but it is leadership. So I have 3 very important questions for you that, in my own personal experience, have truly taught me to understand leadership, not as a definite answer, but as a continuous process through which we can evolve. The first question is, what are your beliefs about leadership? Is there anything stopping you right now from believing in your own potential for leadership? I'm not talking about just leadership in terms of getting in front of an organization or simply aspiring to becoming an executive director or CEO. By all means, those are great things. I'm talking about greater leadership. And for me, the greatest thing that you can do with leadership is to go and give it to someone else, especially someone who's in need. So what do you believe about leadership and your own potential? The second question goes back to this feeling of hunger, and it is about purpose. Ask yourself, what I'm doing right now, going to this university, being right here, why are you doing it? And if you answer that question and you are not satisfied with your answer, or if you answer that question and you truly begin to not understand even how is it that you ended up right here, then perhaps it's time for you to feel uncomfortable again and ask yourself, what is your purpose? The last question that you really have to ask yourself, and this is perhaps where I oftentimes have to remind myself to laugh and not take myself too seriously. I've had a difficult life. But I think at the end of the day, an important question that you have to ask yourself is, are you happy? I can tell you I am very happy with what I do. I get to travel all over the nation, speaking with students, educators about leadership. Sometimes I cannot even believe I get paid for doing it. It's pretty cool. I will do it for free. In fact, I did for 5 years before I started my business. And that's how I knew that was my purpose. What do you believe? What is your purpose? And once you are doing what you believe it's for you, are you happy doing it? Time and again, for me, those 3 questions have led me and have helped me to not only create opportunities for myself, but to create opportunities for others. If there is one thing that I wish for all of you, it's not to spend a night feeling hungry. I'm not saying go and feel hungry for a whole day and discover what leadership means. No, that is not the message. The message is get uncomfortable. Try something that's impossible. And in doing so, I hope that you will discover leadership, not as a position, but as a life journey. Thank you.